Welcome to another Skins video. I know you guys are shocked to see me. Don't worry, I did not forget about this series. I just took a break, but we're bringing it back. Today's video is about Effy from Skins and her character development. I thought that YouTube really needed a video on this topic because I haven't seen one yet, and I don't understand why, because she is such a cultural icon and a very famous character. This was inspired by a comment on one of my other Skins videos by Whisper Willows, who said, "I would love your take on Effy and why she's so captivating, not just for the other characters but for the audience. She is such a timeless character," and I totally agree. I really like her. So that's what we're talking about today. I did some research. I am a bit of a detective at the moment, and I was like, okay, I'll do my investigating. Let's see what other people have to say. And there was this article published called The Enduring Appeal of Effy from Skins by Emma Garland, which I really liked. And she basically said Effy is an enigma, a train wreck, a femme fatale whose allure is inherently bound up in her own undoing. Her magnetism comes from the conflict between how she really feels deeply and how she acts as though she doesn't feel a thing, a facade recognizable to the audience but very few characters in the show. On the one hand, it's quite funny that a character in a show targeted at British millennials, specifically between the years 2007 and 2010, resonates so strongly with an international audience of teens today. And I totally agree. It's crazy now that she is a timeless character, and no matter what year you watch this show, there will still be people that resonate with her and take something away from it and take something away from her development in general. And there is such a contradiction between what Effy says and how she really feels, and she is so full of conflicts and paradoxes. We all have sub-personalities, and you can be operating at two different extremes. So you can be like someone that feels really deeply and gets really attached, but then if someone hurts you too many times, you can cut off like that and become extremely cold. Effy is a perfect example of that, and that's why so many people resonated with her, because they saw themselves in her and how she's so confusing in many ways, because you have to admit what she does is weird. Her behavior is weird. Like, it's because she has a lot of, I guess, unresolved issues, and so she hasn't really embraced the different parts of herself and integrated those different parts of her personality. So what happens is it comes across as like very fragmented because she hasn't embraced all those parts of herself. So she's just got this one side of her that's really affectionate and almost needy, and then this other side that really pretends that she couldn't care less, and that's why she intrigues us to this day. And she's also obviously a very like confident, kind of seductive personality, and that's another reason why people liked her, is because she's so young. So it has that scandalous element, because it's shocking that someone as young and seemingly innocent as she is such a flirt and kind of knows what men want. And I thought now I would discuss her evolution throughout the show. So let's start with season 1. She's more of a supporting character. I would say I really like her in season 1, where you don't really know anything about her, and she actually appears to be mute because she never talks. It's really bizarre, and you don't know if it's like what's going on, but she never says anything. She's just this silent observer, and you know that she can be snarky and manipulative like her brother Tony, but she shows it less because she says less and she's more in the background. And we know that she's a bit of a rebel. Like, in literally the beginning of the show in its entirety, we see her and Tony kind of distracting their parents because she needs to sneak back into the house. She's been out partying or whatever she's doing, and she doesn't want her parents to know, so Tony creates a distraction so she can come back in, and it's a routine they're clearly familiar with. So right from the first few minutes of the show, it's set up that we're dealing with very rebellious teenagers here who kind of go against what's expected of them, and her brother are little troublemakers together. And it's clear that she really cares about Tony and doesn't seem to care about many people, but they do have an attachment to each other, and that's clear as well because Tony seemed like such a heartless character, but it seems like the one person he actually cares about is Effy, and so he's very, very upset when anything bad happens to her, and he will step in to try and protect her. Effy shows some tendencies similar to an arsonist, but again, we don't know that much about her aside from the fact that she has a bit of a darkness to her and that Tony is protective of her. But what's interesting is she starts talking again in season 2 right after Tony is hit by a bus in his accident, and she saw it happen and it really traumatized her. And actually we see her referencing that accident again later in therapy in later seasons, so it's clear that it was extremely devastating for her to see that happen to her brother. Not that she was completely free of trauma beforehand and had this perfect childhood. No one has had a perfect childhood, but I think that event really set it off, and it almost triggered her into speaking and encouraged her to speak, maybe because she realized that she needed to use her voice to get help for him, so it was kind of the incentive she needed to talk more. There are a few points where she does speak, like when she kind of is annoyed at Tony for treating Michelle badly, or when she feels the need to say something, she does. I also really love her eye makeup with the smoky eye, which she's had basically since the beginning of time, and I haven't really recreated it in this video actually, but this week, because I was watching parts of the show and her scenes, rewatching her scenes, I started experimenting and doing my eye makeup like that, because there are some tutorials online, you know, where you smudge out the black underneath and then on the top, and then you like do a little bit above here as well, and it actually looks so good. I was really shocked that her smoky eyes, such a fast kind of messy look, but like messy makeup is in again, you know, and I was like, wait, her makeup is so good. And she does this bit of blue here, and I was like, wait, she is such a slay. Like, she has really good style. But anyway, let's move on to series 2. So Tony makes a comment to Effy in season 2 that she doesn't fool him, because she makes some comment to him about not needing love and being unbreakable, and he's like, yeah, I'm not buying it, Effy. So he knows that she says a lot of stuff but doesn't actually mean it, and she cares. Well, she pretends not to care, she pretends not to feel, but she actually does. But she has a very strong facade. You see how she is with her friends, how she is in public, how she sachets around the hallway, and it's very clear that only people who are related to her maybe, or know her really well, see what's underneath, and people like Tony see that she's actually quite vulnerable. And in the finale, we see Effy in the final shot before the credits, kind of smirking at the camera while lying under Tony's duvet cover, breaking the fourth wall and implying that she will be the main character of the next season. And we don't see much of Effy in season 2 again, because she's only a supporting character, but we do see her really cleverly managing to orchestrate couples getting back together and being a voice of reason. So although she seems to be a troublemaker, it's clear that she does have a heart, and she likes or dislikes certain people, or has a degree of empathy. Now season 3 is when we actually get to know Effy properly, because she takes center stage in the show, and Effy's motivations are made out to be a lot more complicated than they seem. She has turned 16, and now she's aware more than ever that a lot of her power lies in her sex appeal, which when you realize this as a woman, you basically never go back. You literally never go back. That's it. Like, once you truly get it, and she gets it. But there is a lot of her kind of toying with that as a result, and kind of abusing it, like not in a great way, just kind of having fun with it, but taking it a bit too far. And you see that with how it comes out in her relationship with Freddie. But I really feel now, I'm rewatching stuff, that her relationship with Freddie was not nearly as well developed as people made it out to be. There was no like understandable reason as to why they would like each other, and I think the writers were relying a lot on chemistry and longing glances, hoping that we would buy it. And maybe I bought it at first until I rewatched it, and I was like, wait, what do they actually have in common? What do they like about each other? What about their how do they get to know each other? Like, it really seems so based in lust, and so it's hard for me to believe when he says he loves her and stuff, because I really feel like he doesn't know her that well, and they did not have that much screen time developing their relationship as a couple. But I'm not saying they're not cute, by the way. I think they're adorable, but I really wish that could have been fleshed out a bit more as to why these two people liked each other, why he, out of all the men in the world, was the one to kind of melt her heart, melt the Ice Queen. Like, what was it about him that she was so drawn to, aside from him being hot? Inquiring minds would love to know. But at this point, she's very much the dark feminine energy, and I think that's why people still are obsessed with her now, because she doesn't speak super fast like I am right now, because I'm trying to get all my points out there as quickly as possible, and I'm like, blah, blah, info dump. No. She's slow, she pauses, she takes her time, and it's like she really values what she says, and so the audience is hooked in, the characters are hooked in as well, because she doesn't say much. Like, I don't think we ever really see her blabber away. It's like she thinks about what she says and she delivers it in as few words as possible. But it's really effective though, because it means that you value what she says more, because she says less, but she means what she says. So it makes her this very seductive character, and she definitely weaponizes that a lot, unfortunately to the detriment of some of the men in the show, like Freddie and his friends. It was so heartless, actually, like not in a good way. She totally derailed their friendship a lot because they were really close at the beginning, but they were all fighting over her. And I don't think she properly, I mean, I'm not going to be that harsh on her. She was a teenager and she was stupid and foolish, but I don't think she really considered how many ramifications that had on their friendship, because they all had this crush on her. And it would have been better if she just kind of chose one rather than sleeping with one and then flirting with Freddie. And it was all very confusing and not good for their friendships with each other to kind of have this woman pitting them against each other in a sense. And it's like she was just kind of enjoying the attention without thinking about the consequences of that, because you're dealing with real human beings here, even though they're idiots, but still they liked her. However, because she has this super like sexy, I'm doing drugs party lifestyle thing, and I'm lots of fun to be around, and let's go smoke together attitude, you don't see the vulnerability that's underneath. And it seems like she's hiding her real self from the world. And it's also other people's fault too, because they put her into a certain box. And so it's like if she tries to go outside of that, people don't really know what to do with it, because she's just the sexy one or the mysterious one, the one that doesn't say much. And she's aware of it as well, like the role that she's being boxed into. But it is crazy, some of the stuff she does in the show, and some of the camera angles that are kind of very male gazy, or focusing on her shorts or her little, you know, her outfits or whatever, and her body. And the actress who plays her even said, like in, I think it was a TikTok post, she said, watching Euphoria for the first time, thinking this is crazy for 17-year-olds, and then remembering what I was doing on TV at 14, because she was 14 when the show started. And she added, I'll always be grateful, but yeah, safeguarding really wasn't a thing back then. And then a fan asked if the show had like affected her mentally, and Kaya replied, yes, it was a beautiful time, but also the deep-rooted cause of a lot of my issues now. Still, it gave me the opportunity to do the job I loved. So she's very respectful about it. Like, you need to read between the lines here, but she's basically saying, yeah, I love acting. I'm very grateful for the role and the opportunity, but also considering how young I was, not much safeguarding. It was a bit exploitative. Like, that's what she's saying. And you can definitely see it in, you know, some of the sex scenes and stuff. It's quite shocking considering that the actress was still underage when filming those things. And it's definitely a sign that the show is, I mean, I don't know if you could get away with filming that now, to be honest, and doing those things, but Skins was very scandalous for the period even. I think people get very caught up in hyping Effy up, as they should. She's an icon, but they kind of forget that she makes a lot of mistakes too, like all the characters in the show, and she's not always the best person, obviously. But like the way she treated Pandora, for instance, as this ego boost, and not really taking an interest in Pandora's life, kind of using her. And she was just grateful basically that Pandora wasn't as hot as her and wasn't going to take her boyfriends. And so when Pandora did actually do that, she was all shocked, like, oh, but you're not allowed to do that as my friend. And it felt very entitled, like she didn't really see what value Pandora had to offer, or just wanted Pandora to be there but not outshine her and not really have a life of her own. And yeah, no wonder Pandora just felt a bit disregarded in her friendship, because she genuinely thought that, like, she kind of idolized Effy and put her on a pedestal, and Effy kind of enjoyed being the ringleader and being in power, but wasn't really, like, it wasn't a genuine friendship. It was just a bit of an ego trip. And we see that despite Effy's cool, collected exterior, it's an overcompensation, because underneath she is so uncool and so uncollected and really wild and out of control and impulsive and honestly depressed, like just doing things because she's so desperate to feel something. And you realize this as the show goes on, that Effy is very emotionally numb and feels down, and that's why she does stuff like has sex with boys in the school, or why she goes and does drugs, because she's looking for a high and for a thrill, because she's so numb. And that was really clear to me in the episode Pandora, when Effy's parents are having problems and her father leaves her and her mother, and Effy's really struggling with the cheating and her parents' relationship, and she's down about it. But rather than having an outlet to express that in a normal way, she just messes up at Pandora's birthday party. Like, it's Pandora's party, it's Pandora's day, and Effy's not respectful to that, and she doesn't make the party into something Pandora wants. She turns it into this big shit show, and it's literally Effy's fault that happened. And Pandora was so upset, and she was like, you know, this was my party and you kind of ruined my day for me. And it was really selfish of Effy. Pandora's mad at her. And then what's interesting to me is that Effy says, am I not allowed to be upset too? Am I allowed to be anything but me? And that implies that the world sees her as this detached, emotionless, sexy figure. And so to her, it was annoying because when she's there clearly having a mental breakdown and getting drunk and being impulsive, being a mess, and then she's clearly upset, no one's really asking if she's okay. And it's like she feels boxed into this role and she's not allowed to express vulnerability. And she's saying, am I not allowed to be anything but me? So she feels like when she does do something different, the world doesn't approve of that from her. And that's something that I think when you get older, like there's less of it, but definitely for me in high school as well, it wasn't that long ago really, but it was the same sort of thing of like, you know, you make a certain impression when you arrive at school on your classmates, you change, and they find it so hard to adjust to the change because you've been boxed in a certain way, and it's the most annoying thing ever. Another interesting thing, again with Effy struggling to feel things and being scared of her own feelings, is in the episode Freddie. Effy rebuffs Freddie's suggestion that they'd be good together, and she claims that she would merely break his heart. Then he says, maybe I'll break yours, and she says,
nobody breaks my heart.
Iconic, legend, but also that's Effy's probably her most famous line in the show, and it's used a lot in like Instagram reels and stuff. It was like a little trend for a while on social media because it's kind of iconic, being like, nobody breaks my heart. And I think that's why people liked Effy, is because of that appeal. And I think a part of people maybe wants to be like that too, because they feel so attached to things and so uncool. And so Effy, like for a lot of people, I know they were saying that there was that Tumblr era where everyone wanted to be Effy and was posting about her when they were teen girls, and every teen girl wanted to be Effy because of that appeal she had of seeming so sexy and like, nobody breaks my heart. This heartbreaker, man-eater thing. People were just like, ugh, like, can I have some of that energy? I want to be like that too. But the thing is, it's a double-edged sword though, because sure, it's cool and sexy, but also we're humans, and it's normal to feel attached, and for a relationship to work, it actually requires communication and honesty and vulnerability. And so her being like, nobody breaks my heart, yeah, it's all well and sexy and everything, but actually part of being a functioning human being is that your heart can be broken. That means it's working. It's a good thing if your heart can get broken. And Effy is so uncomfortable with that, which actually points to some deeper issues. And I think people were very quick to kind of overlook that and say it's sexy, but actually it points to a lot of unresolved trauma, in my opinion. Later in that episode, Freddie's confused because she's saying, you know, nobody breaks my heart, but I think he can sense that underneath she has this kind of unexpected neediness and a romantic connection to him. And so later in the lake, Freddie like sees her in the lake and he's running to express his feelings, so they swim towards each other in the water and they share this kiss. And I actually love that scene. It's probably one of my favorite in the show, and I thought it was really well done and really romantic because you can see that Effy's struggling to maintain this sort of I don't care, I'm sexy facade with him, and you can see that she genuinely likes him and thinks he's great. It's very obvious at this point that she has very real feelings for him but doesn't know how to handle it, and that's something she says later in the show is, I just want to feel something. So she's really like wanting to feel something, but at the same time when she does feel something real, she gets scared of what she's feeling. And you can see that because she keeps returning to Cook, Freddie's friend, multiple times, even though she doesn't like Cook. And one point she hooked up with him and then they ran away together, and it's really shitty of her the way that she treats Cook, but also the effect it has on Freddie. But the reason she does that is because it's easy to have sex with Cook. It's easy to flirt with him and have this shallow, meaningless relationship because her heart was never in it. She can just completely detach, or even disassociating, I would argue, because she's not really there. She's not really in it. She doesn't really like him, but it's easier. And that's why so many people are in relationships like that, where they're not really present, but it's because it feels easier to make that work because they don't need to feel what they're feeling. I would argue that a massive part of Effy's character arc is becoming comfortable with expressing vulnerability. And Effy does shitty things in the show too that people don't always want to acknowledge, like that fight she had with Katie where she hit Katie in the woods and left her there even though she knew that Katie could die, but she was too scared, and then she was lying about it and really anxious but didn't want to take accountability for what she did. Like, you can see that she's just losing it, and underneath this whole collected persona, she's actually struggling with a mental illness and is struggling with her own trauma and issues, and is very impulsive and reckless. A full moon appears in Effy's central episodes in season 3 and 4, which people said was a connection to Effy's like dark state of mind and her depressive disorder, but I would argue it's also about the subconscious, because like historically and in tarot readings and all these things, the moon is normally a symbol of the subconscious mind, and I think it's meant to show that a lot of what's happening with Effy, like you need to read between the lines, and it's subconscious for her. It's like this underlying programming. At the end of season 3, Effy gives into her feelings for Freddie once she's forced to admit it, and so they sleep together and they start this relationship. So you can see that she's starting to break through her fear of vulnerability by actually wanting to be in a relationship with him. But there are multiple issues throughout the show and in season 4 of her basically pushing Freddie away and not being comfortable in the relationship with him, or not expressing to him how she's feeling, or feeling guilty about something and kind of trying to break up with him, or whatever the case may be. In Freddie's episode, Effy's mother has gone on an extended vacation, leaving Effy alone. So her and Freddie are just free in the house to be in their little love bubble and do whatever they want. So they're just making out, they're doing drugs, heavy partying, whatever they want. It's bad, but it's also good at least that she's acknowledged her feelings for him. So I don't really know how to feel about that. Even though they're in this happy love bubble, that doesn't fix Effy's issues. Being with the man of her dreams has not changed her. In fact, it's just brought those issues she had to light. But it's made her realize that being in the love bubble doesn't fix any kind of loneliness or dissatisfaction in her life, or a mental illness or nothing. Like, love cannot fix you. And that's a big theme in the show, which I actually really like, because in the relationship with Freddie, he's trying to help her, but he can't. And Effy is just acting really erratically. Just cutting out pictures of death and pasting them to the wall, writing things on the wall, hiding under the bed, becoming really negative, even hallucinating. And Freddie starts, after doing some research, thinking that basically she's developing some sort of depressive psychosis and also manic episodes. We always knew from the beginning that there were things that Effy was struggling with, so it would make sense that those issues would come to the forefront later and there'd be something underneath that would rear its head. So I'm not mad about that per se, but I also feel like this season was a different tone to the others in a way I didn't like, where it felt like it was more kind of glamorizing this whole beautifully broken concept and making her mental illness like the forefront of her personality and kind of making it like sexy, and it kind of lost the appeal for me because it was so over dramatic in a way. But Effy starts getting really freaked out and distraught over things, and she's hallucinating these creatures that she's not strong enough to fend off because of Freddie, and just saying all this weird stuff, like panicking when nothing's happening, like hallucinating, and Freddie doesn't know how to help her. And then Freddie realizes later that Effy's been left in the bathroom too long and she's not coming out, so he comes in and she's tried to end her own life, and he's just so devastated, he has to rush her to the hospital, and it's just very, very dramatic. So at that point, people realized that she needed help, and so she was understandably submitted to a psychiatric hospital, and she's under the supervision and counseling of this psychiatric John Foster, and she thinks he'll really help her. And this is where, for me, it really went into like kind of exploitative over just crazy territory. But she starts seeing John, and then instead of that helping her, it's actually making her condition worse, and she starts to forget who she is and her relationship history with Freddie and the fact that Tony had an accident. Because it's like with this guy, he's trying to, with a psychiatrist, erase her trauma, and he's doing these really weird measures with her of, oh, what if we reframe that and say that event never happened? And sometimes that stuff is good, where it's like you rewrite your past, you decide what happened, and then you can like change it, reframe it, and say that a certain event never happened to you, and it can be really empowering. But in this case, it wasn't empowering, because it was just making Effy lose her sense of self altogether and forget who Freddie was, and it's like she's losing her mind. That definitely was not like what the effect of the therapy should have been. And so she realizes that John's the problem, and she says to him, I don't want you to be my psychiatrist anymore, you're not helping. And he's being weirdly pushy, and then Freddie's really protective of her, and he's like, dude, no, like, she doesn't want to work with you, leave. And he's a bit creeped out by how insistent the doctor is, like, oh, she's my patient, she's my patient. And Freddie's like, well, no, she doesn't want you to, like, are you deaf? Like, please leave. And so later, because Freddie's freaked out by it, he actually goes to the guy's house to talk to him about this. Actually, John invites him to his home, and Freddie kind of confronts him, and he's like, look, she was with you, you were treating her, but she was actually getting worse. Like, I don't know what you were doing. And he's like, so leave her alone. And then John's being kind of weirdly resistant to it, and it's starting, I mean, okay, I shouldn't laugh. I really shouldn't laugh, but I thought it was really funny how John was going on this whole tangent about her being his patient, and then Freddie's like, are you deaf? Like, she doesn't want you to be a psychiatrist. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, it was kind of funny because the whole thing was so ridiculous. Like, it was so unprofessional. It's insane. Anyway, Freddie tries to leave because he's made his point, and the doctor's like talking about really weird stuff, and it's getting like, Freddie's getting scared because he realizes the guy's not right in the head. So he goes to leave, the door's locked, and then the guy basically brutally murders him, and it is the most horrendous 3 minutes I ever had to watch in my entire life, and it was disgusting. thing, and I hated it so much. I feel like that whole plot was so random, and killing Freddie off was completely unnecessary, pointless, and just disturbing, I guess, for the sake of shock value or having a tragedy in the season, but it literally ruined the season for me. And the way that Effy's mental issues suddenly got worse, it just felt very like random and out of nowhere. At that point, Effy's in hospital, and so she's thinking that Freddie, her beloved boyfriend, just decided to dump her and walk away and leave with no explanation, rather than knowing that he'd been literally murdered out of trying to protect her. It's just devastating to me, and he was such a good guy, and he deserved so much of a better send-off for his character, or at least some kind of justice. And I thought season 4 was just terrible in comparison to the earlier seasons, and it was actually really disappointing how much the quality of writing was reduced, especially with stuff like that. And what is that with the whole weird stereotypical horror movie-esque psycho murderer doctor? Like, it's so cliche and disappointing. And the way that her mental decline was kind of all glamorized, and then she has this, what are the odds she has this crazy like psychiatrist who's brainwashing her? It just all felt ridiculous. And it was also so depressing with Freddie's death that it was no longer clear, is this meant to be like a dark comedy or is this an actual horror? Because with his death scene and the way it was, it seemed like a scene from a horror movie, and there was just no joy in it. It was just depressing as anything. And not only was it extremely disturbing to watch, which I'm sure many of you will agree with, because I know so many fans were upset about this death scene, but also, what was the point? Like, what was the purpose of this? So I guess my conclusion is I like her character a lot, but I was disappointed with the way it was handled towards more like the end of the show. It was better, I think, when she was older, like as an adult, and you can just see like what her life is like post Freddie. When she's older, she's working in like a dead-end job as a receptionist in a high-profile hedge fund. But I definitely preferred her like in season 3, but season 4 with the whole mental decline thing, I'm not saying she shouldn't have had one. There's definitely a way of doing it, and like I said, it was clear from the beginning that she had unresolved issues, and many characters in the show go off the walls at various points, so they struggle with something or they have a breakdown, but it felt like not the most sensitively handled. Maybe part of what was making her like sexy and appealing, I don't know, like at some points it was really, really good and I was like, this is great, and at other points I was like, okay, I don't really know what they're doing here. Maybe I wouldn't have said that, because it made sense that maybe she would have a mental decline, and that wasn't necessarily like exploitative, but what more ruined it for me was that whole psychiatrist storyline. I just really hated that, and then Freddie being killed by him. But it was kind of cool, the point the show was trying to make is that other people around her have this superficial view of her and are romanticizing her and not seeing what's underneath and the struggles beneath her like exterior. And I do think that that was a really interesting part of the show that was dealt with well. I did like that. But I would like to know what you guys think of her character as someone that is very like symbolic, I guess, in the show, and probably the most famous character in Skins. Like, I knew about Effy for years before I even watched Skins because she made such an impression, so they clearly did a good job creating her because she's so like unique and distinctive. But let me know what you think in the comments, and I will link my Skins playlist in the description, and I will see you for my next video. Bye guys.